A lot of people have been upset with NPS, and that's because they've pushed the envelope on NPS and trying to get NPS to do what it shouldn't be doing. For instance, a good example is making NPS a transactional metric. It infuriates me still when I call in or email in a service problem and I think it's resolved. And what is the survey that I get back? An NPS survey.
Mm.
That shouldn't be done at that time. A customer effort survey is is a transactional means because we want to know how how easy was it to do business? Did you resolve my request or my issue and things of that nature? But NPS is not a transactional metric. It's a relational metric.
Right.
And it's all about the relationship over time.
Mm-hmm.
And you should take the score annually. Biannually would be preferred. Some organizations do it quarterly, but and this is where the problem is. You're exec, let's say the CFO, and let's say you want Qualtrics, and you want the funding to get Qualtrics in in the organization, and you say, "Oh, customer experience is doing great. Look at our NPS went up 30 points." What is the CFO supposed to do with that information? Nothing.
Hello and welcome to CX Heroes. Today's guest is Sue Duris. Sue has an MBA, CCXP, and is founder and principal consultant at M4 Communications, a CX business transformation and marketing strategy consultancy. Across a 30-plus year career, she's built CX programs from the ground up in telecom for WorldCom, professional services for Resources Global Professionals, and is head of stakeholder experience for the Principles for Responsible Investment, a UN-backed responsible investment body where she's built a signatory experience program in the ESG space. She's been quoted in Forbes magazine, The Times, and the Sun newspapers. Sue, thanks for joining.
Well, thank you for inviting me. Looking forward to it.
Me too. So you've spent years in telecom and professional services before CX became your full-time focus. You eventually landed at this ESG this ESG world in related to the UN. What what pulled you out of marketing and into CX?
Well, I've always been interested in the post purchase
Mm,
side. You know, you have the acquisition and the renewal side. And I started my career in finance, then moved to product marketing and management, and
hmm
then corporate marketing. And that's always been something that that side of the house, the growth, how do we build products and build relationships with our customers so that we're driving customer lifetime value, greater lifetime value, and they're sticking with us. So I've always been interested in that side of the house.
hmm
So I pivoted a little bit from my marketing consulting into content. I think that content is very important and extremely important in the CX space, more so than others might think, because I always feel that content is kind of that engine that takes you on the journey. The
Right.
customer journey is the train track. And
hmm
that content, if it's resonating with with a prospect, that's how you get them in the door. And then
Right.
content and relationship development helps build trust so they trust you enough to want to sign on the dotted line and hopefully stay with you. And ultimately, I think the ultimate goal for all customers is to make them an advocate, to help you sell, and believing so much in your organization that they want to stick with you on the journey.
Right, right. And something about making customers into advocates is exciting to you.
Yeah, yes, exactly. And then from content, I pivoted into customer experience. It was kind of like coming back home in a way, because I'm dating myself now, but back when solution selling was a term, that was, I think, near the nearest to customer experience at the time, because you're working with a customer to help them find a solution to a problem that they have. It
Right.
wasn't customer experience at the time. Customer experience, I mean, if you want to date it back, has its roots way back when. Um, but when I started getting involved in solution selling and helping those sales teams and things of that nature, that really drove it for me. That I was always very much in being custom. I'm very much customer obsessed. Excuse me for flipping that part. Um, and I've always been interested in what their job to be done is and how we can help them meet those objectives and meet those outcomes so that they are successful. So
Right.
that's what's always been the driver for me.
Yeah, I think there's something that feels very good about that, isn't there? I mean, selling is sort of like, getting to success for the organization, right? Getting to success for the company. Um, but sort of solution selling or customer experience or customer success is about, getting to success for the customer, right? And it feels good to, to help people, right? In the way that they want to be helped.
Oh, absolutely. I love the advisory piece. If I
Right.
can share some knowledge with the customer that the light bulb goes on, yes, you you get what I need, and oh, this all makes sense. Same way with not only being an advisor to the customer, but my internal customer is the C-suite. Is Are
Right.
those functional leaders? So because as a customer experience practitioner, I view my role as being the customer voice inside the organization. But I have to also sell my team, the organization, on this is what the customer is saying, and this is how it helps you if we can fix the customer's problem. And
Right. And
and
connecting it
that's
back to the organization.
exactly, and that's typically protecting revenue, increasing
Right.
revenue, reducing
Right.
cost to serve, mitigating risk, operational excellence. So when and I think that's the issue that we're in right now in the customer experience space. I've always been, and how I conducted my teams that I've been on, and all the programs that I've built, is the customer experience pieces to help the customer. That's good. That's the starting point. But what does the future hold? And that's increased growth,
Right.
um,
Right.
better profitability,
Hmm.
reduce reduced cost, all those things. The operationalizing of CX kind of, I don't want to say this, but it kind of has taken a back seat to what I want to say here is taking back seat to analyzing and reporting. And many customer experience teams tend to stop there. But now with AI and its speed at scale, it's exposing all the issues that organizations have, and it's not enough. It is just not enough for a customer experience team to analyze and report. It now it's analyze, report, act, because the C-suite are looking for what are the financial impacts? What is
Right.
customer experience doing to drive impact? And that's
Right.
why I talk a lot about customer experience teams have some wonderful activities, but until you can translate those into the language that a chief operating officer, chief revenue officer, a chief financial officer can understand, and in essence, you're helping them to change those decisions so that you're looking at things that will help the customer.
Right. Alignment, right, is the word
Exactly.
that comes to mind. I think there's so many organizations out there that start with the best of intentions, but somewhere along the line, those priorities become misaligned with the intention. And I think we understand, broadly that, better customer experience equals better business, but where does it actually connect, right? Um, it's a great question. I want to get into that a little bit more in this episode. Um, the starting point here, we're sort of going back into history. Is there a specific CX decision earlier in your career that maybe didn't go the way you hoped or didn't have the result you hoped for? And what did you learn from that, or how did you overcome that?
Well, I think it's interesting that you bring up alignment, and it is very important, that alignment piece, because I'm thinking of a particular role I was in. I was a chief marketing officer a number of years back, and for a startup, and I was doing the marketing piece. Everybody understood what marketing was, and its role, and how it basically drives the business, or helps drive the business. But we also brought in customer experience. And I think taking time to educate teams on what is customer experience. And back at that time, customer experience was fairly new. Um, what is customer experience? What what value does it hold?
Hmm.
Why should I care about it? So, what is it? Why is it important? And what's in it for me?
Right.
Basically, those three questions. And I think at that particular time, if I would have spent more time aligning the teams to our goal, that of customer experience, and why it was important, and why making sure that the customer's needs were being met, and not building things from the inside out, but taking their input to make our product better, actually got to our goals quicker than creating a product and then chasing customers with that product. It was much it's much quicker doing an outside in focus to get to your goals, which is growth, and increased revenue and things of that nature.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, start from the goal and work backwards, right? Is sort of the saying, and it's a popular saying for good reason, because if you plan from the goal, then you're more likely to reach it, of course. Um, there's a word for this in Japanese, which I learned, which is actually gyakusan, but it basically just means reverse accounting. It's the same idea of um, working backwards from the goal to make the plan.
Or Stephen
And
Covey, too, begin with the end in mind.
right, 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 yeah. Um, but I think that the again, it's even if you have that mentality going into it, it's sort of it's all the struggles and challenges along the way of achieving that intention that you had in the beginning. Um, I wanted to hear from you if you could walk me through a time that you helped build out a CX program that was successful. And what were some of the elements of that program that stood out as most impactful? And when those, and how did that fit into this idea of like starting from the goal, whether that's your goal or the goal is maybe passed down to you, but how do you think about that, and how did you sort of put those right pieces in place, to make the impact in it and reach that goal?
Well, my first focus, and I know when anyone comes into a new job or a new consulting engagement, you want to hit the ground running and have that first win as
Right,
quickly as possible. But I view backing up to speed up uh,
right,
very, very important. And so whenever I go into these things, I like to get a lay of the land. And
sure,
where's the data? What's the CX stack look like? Are there things that they've already done so you're not reinventing the wheel? So that was the first thing I looked I look at at gaps. I just want to research what's there at present. The second thing that I like to do is and I've done is have meetings, introductory meetings with key stakeholders for a number of reasons. First, to find out how they fit in the organizational big picture, finding out what their issues are, and introducing myself and explaining what I do. That gives me a beginning list. If there's not a list of what are the issues, sometimes starting internal is the best place.
right, right,
And what I found, in matter of fact, my last build at the PRI, that a lot of teams that I spoke with, they didn't have a person to go to for, hey, I have this issue. Who can help us with the issue? That was one of the big insights that I found. And it served me later because as a customer experience practitioner or a leader, regardless, we're trying to build influence and build trust. And many times that's not only translating what we're doing to the C-suite, to the executive leadership and putting a number on it. It's also working with the functional groups. And what I was able to do is start small. I fixed a couple of issues for a couple of teams. They remembered that. They came back to me for more issues. Other teams saw that. So that there's a snowball effect here. You're built, and this is how you build influence and trust from the bottom up. So that was kind of the second thing that I did. The third thing that I did is I wanted to look at the touch points that were happening currently on the journey. And I discovered that there were like over 50 touch points on this particular engagement. And
oh,
what's important to look at is, should those touch points actually be listening posts, or and you really have to align that with, is there an owner? Is there an owner
Mm,
for that particular touch point? If there's not an owner, then you need to determine, is it important enough to still be a touch point, or and if so, who's going to own it? Or maybe it's not a touch point. And also
mm,
identifying touch points that weren't included. So looking at that piece, because then that help that helps me determine, okay, what's the journey? Putting a journey together, and then looking at the journey and seeing where those gaps could be. Then one of the other things that I've done is totally overhauling the voice of the customer program. In the PRI one, that's exactly what we did. Um, there, I put in data on where is our customer growth, where what is happening, if it what's changing the number
mhm,
from quarter to quarter, and finding out specifics. What are the root causes of those changes? Looking at the different markets, and at the time we had 20 markets. So looking to see what's the sentiment, what's the engagement level? Is it
mhm,
is it a retention? Is it a growth market? All those little pieces sounds like a lot, but putting it together helped me to be able to come up with some solid recommendations that not only the executive leadership but the board praised. And I also, because I believe in inclusivity and letting employees know what's going on, I published
mhm,
those voice of the customer reports, and I actually had teams come to me. Oh, that is really interesting. I didn't know that that was happening. I have this
mm.
particular issue. Maybe if I took some of the recommendations that you have in your report here, that might help us. So it was opening the doors to a lot of possibility.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many good points in there. One of the things you were saying earlier that really stood out to me was, okay, you've mapped the customer journey. Okay, you've got these 50 touch points, but then asking the question, which of these should be listening posts? Which of these are we actually listening to customers or not? Where should we be listening? And then who's actually responsible for the result of that, right? Once we pick something up, who does it actually how does it map back into the organization actually taking action? And that's sort of what you're getting to here at the end of your response as well. Is once you publish this VOC, there's people who said, "Oh, I didn't know that. Now I can improve what I'm doing to help the customer more." Um, I think that sort of checking where you should be listening, and then once you're listening, checking what action should be taken based on that, right? That's like a really concrete thing that I think you summed it up very succinctly, and I think
But
that's
that
like
was
a
just
very
the
clear
reporting
clear
piece.
path,
That I want to be
right?
true to my message. That was just the reporting piece. We also
Hmm.
built through Salesforce a a closed loop system. It was our looping mechanism. So
Hmm.
employees or customers could have access to to this this framework. They could put in a request. This is what's happening. I have this particular issue, and we'd look at it. We'd triage it, whether it was an inner loop or an outer loop type of scenario, and prioritize things. And the inner loop piece was pretty easy, that one person could probably resolve that. But it wasn't just inputting the issue, it was also managing it. What was
Right.
it picked up? What Who was the team involved? Were they doing anything with it? What was the status? Was it moving along? So it was our our eyes on it to make sure that it was being managed, and if we where we needed to get involved. Because as you know, too many times when you say, okay, here's an issue, another team owns this, we go to the team who owns it, and say, this is a fix that needs to occur. Chances
Mhm.
are good it's not going to happen. It's just going to sit there. That's where getting functional, creating a functional team, getting people in the same room to understand what are the priorities. Okay, these are our top 5 things. How are we going to take action? And
Right.
that's
I think,
that's what drove continuous improvement.
yeah, if you have a pile of improvement opportunities, that's not very useful. But if you have top five priorities, that's quite useful, right?
Absolutely. And it wasn't
Yeah.
it wasn't you got to look at, a lot of teams are looking, okay, what's a CX stack? Well, I need to have Qualtrics in there. I need to have Medallia in there. I need Salesforce in there. I need these pieces to fill in the gaps. Look, it all starts with jobs to be done. I hate to be glib about it, but what is the customer job to be done, and go from there.
Right.
Circling back to beginning with the end in mind, and
Hmm.
what are they what are the outcomes that they are trying to achieve.
Right. Yeah, it harps. It bears repeating, right? It's good to harp on these things. It's good to remind ourselves of these things. I think that the fundamentals should be 80% of the work, right? It's about getting those fundamental pieces and that fundamental thought in, and and remembering, so why are we doing this, right? Who are we doing this for? What are they trying to get done? And it needs to be repeated so that it stays front and center. Um, I think you've explained a sort of a frame or a thought process for that, and the example was clear as well. Um, Moving on, I wanted to ask you about NPS because there's been various arguments made about NPS. Gartner research projected that more than 75% of organizations would abandon NPS by 2025. We're in 2026 now, and NPS is still quite relevant. You made a trend prediction for 2026, actually, that the customer trust is at an inflection point, right? And we've seen various research. I'm sorry, I don't have any sources for this right now, but there's various research that's been done about customer trust, and it is at a low point. Customer perception of customer experience is low, historically low, and trust in business is, I believe, historically low as well. And I mean, my personal experience, at least anecdotally, this checks out. I am very distrustful and very skeptical. But do you think that NPS is still a good proxy for customer trust, or not, and why?
NPS in a vacuum on its own, I don't think serves much purpose. I don't think any metric does. You hear people talk about foundational metrics,
Hmm.
and that's great. What is your foundational metric? But it's always built on other things,
Right.
like NPS, like CSAT, like your effort score, different things. So taking a look at the entire picture gives you a sense of where you are, but it's not just looking at the data. It's looking at what's behaviors. What are the outcomes? Does the data align with the outcomes taken? For instance, our renew our strong CSAT, NPS, effort score driving renewals. And is it driving, maybe if you have an advocacy program, more more customers, maybe, or even a reference program, are more customers being wanting to do case studies? Are they wanting to refer? Are they wanting to advocate? that that's where you look at that, and it's a number of different pieces. It's the behaviors, it's the data, it's the surveys, it's it's your employees. What are your employees saying, so that you have a, a qualitative, quantitative picture of
Hmm.
where things are. NPS is part of that. But I think with NPS, I would say that I'm one of the believers in NPS to a point. And that is my my whole feeling position has been that a lot of people have been upset with NPS, and that's because they've pushed the envelope on NPS and trying to get NPS to do what it shouldn't be doing. For instance, a good example is making NPS a transactional metric. It infuriates me still when I call in or email in a service problem and I think it's resolved. And what is the survey that I get back? An NPS survey.
Mm.
That shouldn't be done at that time. A customer effort survey is is a transactional means because we want to know how how easy was it to do business? Did you resolve my request or my issue? And things of that nature. But NPS is not a transactional metric, it's a relational metric.
Right.
And it's all about the relationship over time.
Hmm.
And you should take the score annually. Biannually would be preferred. Some organizations do it quarterly, but and this is where the problem is. If you go to your exec, let's say the CFO, and you want let's say you want Qualtrics and you want the funding to get Qualtrics in in the organization, and you say, oh, customer experience is doing great, look at our NPS went up 30 points. What is the CFO supposed to do with that information? Nothing.
Mm.
And
Mm.
that's where the stalls happen because we're not aligning to what the executive needs. But if the NPS score, that those 30 points resulted in we have an NPS score of 30 points that that translates into X dollars because we were able to fix our content issue happening in on onboarding. People were getting confused. They dropped out of onboarding. They weren't active with the product. And so when renewals came, we saw a drop in renewal. But because we fixed the content, they completed their onboarding and they renewed. We got this much renewal money, and it's reflective in our NPS score. That gives them information that they can use to make a decision. Oh, they brought in an extra whatever, 5 million dollars for renewal because of what they did.
Right.
That builds the credibility points with the execs.
Yeah. I think that that's a great way to describe it. And I think of the difference between talk versus action, right? I think of, NPS as sort of, you think of questions like, would you recommend this product to a friend or a colleague? Something like that. And that's a talking point, and maybe somebody will say, yeah, I would totally do that. But then what is the action that actually happened, right? Did they refer somebody, whether if hopefully you have a mechanism to track a referral, did they volunteer or agree to be part of a case study, right? Have they taken some NPS, re- have they taken some action in the in the space of actual promotion, right? Um, versus just responding positively to a survey. But I think that that's a really good way to sort of dig in a little deeper. And obviously, if there's a specific action that has taken place that you can quantify, like this many referrals happened, or this many, this is our rate of getting case studies per customer or whatever, then that's much closer to the revenue number and the dollar signs, and you can connect those dots, and then you have the influence inside the organization, right?
It's all about measurable impact. How
Yeah.
we can align what we're doing to what the decision makers need,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
hopefully change those decisions. That's a big piece right now that's happening. Just look at Qualtrics. Qualtrics is moving into more decision intelligence, where
Right.
it's not enough to purchase a seat and be able to use the software. Okay, the customers now want to know, what is this software helping me do? What is the
Right.
impact that it's delivered?
Right.
And that's where really laser focusing in how those decisions are being made. What are the inputs to those decisions?
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, I think there's a theme here that I'm picking up on, which is connecting back to action, connecting back to decision. Um, what is the outcome or the impact of listening to customers, of recording NPS? What is the outcome or impact of that? And comes down to decisions that are made in the organization and the actions that are taken, whether by the organization or by the customer. I think there's a rising awareness of this, and there's a rising demand for this across the CX space. Um, and some vendors are moving ahead. I think Qualtrics is definitely moving in the right direction. Um, the At the same time, there's this conversation about the cost center framing, the cost focus, the historical model where it is reactive. We have a problem coming in and we solve it, and it's moving towards this proactive model, and that's where we can talk about the actions and the decisions. But um, what do you think are some of the key challenges in actually affecting that change in an organization and actually getting from the reactive stance to a proactive stance?
I think a lot of it is in organizational design and how things were set up. I don't want to
Hmm.
belabor the history of how we got to where we are, but I view it as we were building products. Just take product development. We were building
Hmm.
products that we thought internally would work for customers, but that's not the right way to do it. It's looking at what are the customer needs and filling that need with a product. It's an easier, it's the faster path to profitability and growth.
Right.
So I think that organizations saw the writing on the wall. They saw some organizations be successful with customer experience. I need a customer experience team myself, says the CEO. It gets it goes in as an add-on. The
Right.
problem is with that add-on, and it was great. It was to fill a need. There was no one really looking at root causes and really dealing with customers, that the customer feedback, analyzing analyzing data and coming up with insight and determining those root causes and putting fixes in place. There there wasn't there was a need for that. The problem was that they didn't align it with the other pieces of the organization. So you had customer experience team doing their own activities, doing their own metrics, and then trying to engage others on this.
Right.
And and they were really relegated to a an analyze and reporting function,
Mm,
i.e., cost center.
right.
So it looks like a cost. That's why adding the outcomes piece, the impact, the action piece trans transitions the team from a cost center to a revenue generator.
Right.
But a lot of that it is with what what the teams are doing, and it's kind of like we stopped, and I'm as guilty as anyone. I don't think there is a customer experience person in the business who has not done just that, done the analysis, done the reporting, tried to do take the actions. And it's not that we've stopped with the reporting. A lot of time to be able to take those actions, customer experience finds the root cause of something. It's in a different team, the ops team. We don't have those decision rights to make those decisions. It has to go to somebody else. And without having executive leadership to really push that and champion that along, it stalls.
Right.
So it's not that customer experience stopped at reporting. It's a lot of times our hands were tied.
Right. Right. And we've been talking and alluding to how to untie one's hands so far in this episode, which is of course, you connect the impact back to dollars and you use that to convince your executive. But I,
I,
I I think yeah, there's this there's some data out there about the cost of adding new customers versus the cost of retaining existing customers. And the cost performance is much higher, like dramatically higher on the retention side. And I think that is ultimately a very compelling argument. What do you think about that?
oh, I absolutely agree. I don't remember the last Bain insight data point, which very interestingly enough, the the creator of NPS, but I believe it costs 7 times more to acquire a customer than retain a customer.
Yep.
I was also going to add that we're also seeing. I'm a big fan, big believer of transitioning our contact centers from being reactive to proactive. And
Hmm.
I think the alignment works especially when the contact center, which in and of itself is a huge touch point, can can be included into the journey. A lot of times contact centers are okay, here's the business and the contact center's out here. So you can't blame them to do nothing but react and fix an issue because
Hmm.
that's what that was set up to be. But when
Right.
you include the contact center as a touch point in the overall ways of working, how do we get end to end? There, it goes from being reactive to proactive, and I've been a long. My position is on contact centers that many times the contact center rep is the first connection a customer has to the
Right.
brand, and
Right.
and they customer relationships can be made or broken inside the contact center.
Right.
So that goes to leadership, making sure that the agents are equipped, training and developing the agents, and that's all end to end. That's all alignment with the entire organization. And to your point, since you so eloquently brought it up earlier that it all does come down to alignment.
Mm. Well, I think alignment is a sort of an ideal state. Um, and perfect alignment is impossible, but worth striving for. And I think that my focus or my interest is what are the challenges that people are really facing towards that goal, and how do you unlock those challenges? And so I think I brought up before this the difference in the incremental cost of retaining a dollar versus gaining a new dollar from a new customer. You cited, I believe, Bain and Company had 7 to 1 on the cost performance there. But people get, you know, just human nature. We get really excited about a new sale, a new customer, and then maybe we don't appreciate the efficiency and the impact that can be made on retaining the existing ones. For people out there, I mean, I think we should be saying this 7 to 1 ratio in every meeting with an executive. Um, that should be sort of siren call, or the alarm that's blaring, to impact the change, to get over the hurdles, right? And get closer to that alignment. Um, are there any other things that you think people can do, any concrete actions or metrics to point to to bring them closer to this proactive contact center, to bring them closer to this um, relationship building function?
One thing is creating a cross-functional team, a
Mm,
CX center of excellence, and
mhm,
the CX leader is uniquely positioned to lead the charge, not do the work, but lead the charge because customer experience intersects with so many different functional groups. And and it all starts, and it's interesting, we're having these AI discussions about the same thing. What gets what happens is when we don't have shared goals amongst the organization, we go off in our our different silos, and we
mhm,
start doing what we think we need to do based on our agenda. Is that agenda aligned with the overall corporate goals or not? When you don't have shared goals, that's when accountability and ownership starts to not happen.
right.
And that leads to having metrics all over the map. So even if customer experience created a metrics dashboard and met with operations, would they buy into it or not? If those metrics weren't shared, um, and 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 it was a shared dashboard where somebody could buy into an owner and take ownership for, it's just not going to happen. That
Mhm,
that's why I think the key to all of this, the organizational design and everything, is how does customer experience look at what the organizational goals are, tie its goals to areas where it can support those goals. One being, if a goal is to increase revenues by 25%, then that
mhm,
should be in customer experience goals to help with that. I mean,
right, right.
people can argue and say, well, that's not customer experience's role to drive revenue. It's it's a shared goal.
Mhm,
So if there are broken processes where that are impacting customers, that customer experience is overseeing, managing fixing whatever, then it does equate to improvements when we can fix the processes.
Right.
Again,
Right.
again, it comes down to, do you have the decisions, the decision rights to make those decisions? When you can align and start with a shared goal leading to those shared objectives, shared metrics, shared outcomes, then that's how it aligns. Just taking it into AI right now, it's very interesting because organizations are looking at the sexy stuff.
Right.
AI can reduce my cost. It can do all these amazing things. That's great, but do you have a purpose for AI? Are
Right.
your use
Right.
cases aligned? Are they shared? Are all the important people in the room that need to be in the room to make those decisions? Otherwise, you could create an AI silo,
Right.
and who is that helping?
Yeah. There's, AI is a tool. It's not a result. Is the line I hear and I like to repeat. The the number of opportunities that are arising because of AI is dramatic. And it's about, it's about alignment. It's about picking your battles and saying we're going to use it to do this to drive this outcome. Um, I think that there's a lot in that, and we're getting towards a longer episode here, but it's just so interesting, and so I want to keep going a little bit further and ask one more question on this AI point, and specifically referencing you had an article that was recently published at cxnetwork.com, published just a few weeks ago, and you're comparing this sort of this moment in CX um, to a crisis, or at least a lot of people feel about it, that feel that it's a crisis or feel that it's in critical moment here. But you argue that it's actually having its finest hour. Can you expand on that a little bit and sort of what's the positive message here, despite all the AI gloom and doom that we're hearing?
Oh, the CX is dead conversation. My view is that, and I don't know if AI is the put not pushing us off the cliff, but pushing us into some type of action. We know that AI is speed at scale. We also know
Mhm.
that AI is not resolving. If you have a broken process, AI is not just going to suddenly fix it. AI is going to expose that and probably,
Right.
if not fixed, hurt trust even more, and
Right.
hurt the brand's reputation that it's taken years years to fix.
Right.
What I see happening is that the buyer is moving upstream. So the buyer now is the CFO, the COO, the CRO, where it used to be the the chief customer officer or VP of CX, or whoever that CX leader was. It's
Mhm.
not diminishing the CX leader. It's actually moving CX closer to that operational core, where we will have more opportunities to be in the room to make impacts. But it it is an effort. It can't just be what we're doing, our CX activities. It's what is the impact that what we're doing, what is it having on revenue, on operations, on the finance of the organization. But I really believe that our greatest days are ahead of us. And that was the gist of I think we are in our finest hour. And it can be the finest hour, but that requires CX to evolve.
Right, right. Yeah, I mean, there's a value that we have inside of my organization, which is chaos is a chance. Um, and I think there is a lot of chaos. There's a lot of noise. There's a lot of hype. There's a lot of people who are, honestly, I think being a little bit reckless about how they're using AI. But there is a lot of opportunity, of course, and with the AI doing what it's doing, at the same time, there's this increasing awareness and this increasing move towards the operational core. I love that wording that you use. I think that is the trend, and I think it is a well aligned trend. It is a trend that improves the customer experience, improves the business. And, if I can be a little bit aspirational for a moment, I think that kind of makes this a better world to live in overall. You know, Commerce and exchange is not going anywhere. Whatever, political or economic system you want to consider, there's always going to be exchange. And that means there's always going to be CX basically. And and if that exchange, post exchange, after purchase, post purchase, you have a good experience, well, a lot of our life is spent having those experiences, whether it's business to business or business to consumer or whatever. Um, and yeah, I mean, it really is an opportunity for for CX to see its finest hour. So I'm very excited about that, and I love the way that you're describing this and thinking about it. We'll link to the article you had on cxnetwork.com for that,
Oh,
and I
lovely.
hope more people can read that and feel the optimism and feel the opportunity here. I
There's
wanted to,
another
yeah, go ahead.
byproduct. I was just going to say something really quick. There is another byproduct here. When the buyer moves upstream, the knowledge doesn't go with it. And that's an
Uh-huh.
opportunity for CX leadership to educate executive leadership.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
it's not just, yes, there are the financial impacts, there are the measurable impacts, but we do this because it's a chain reaction. This happens, then this happens,
Right,
then this happens, and
right.
these are the outcomes, and we
Hmm.
meet our corporate goals.
Yeah. Yeah, connecting the dots, showing the chain of impacts. I'm just imagining in my mind like 7 to 1, Bob. I'm imagining a scenario where 7 to 1, just sort of, and here's how we get there, right? Here's the steps in the middle. I think if that gets repeated a bit more, it should have the right impact on what we're trying to achieve. So, Sue, I wanted to ask you one final question here as we close out the episode. Are there any books or podcasts or personalities you've been enjoying recently? What would you recommend that I check out?
Well, it might be a little different to what you're thinking, but because I live in the UK, but I'm a US expat who lives in the UK, I've been really enjoying The Culture Map by Aaron
Mm,
Meyer because you can't do customer experience the way you do in America in, let's say you have a client in Japan, since you
mm-hmm,
mentioned Japan, one of my
mm-hmm,
favorite countries, by the way, or um, or South America, or the Middle East. So it's and that's, as an American, we have this problem as Americans that we think that we can go wherever and, oh, let's go Americanize it. No, you have to learn the culture.
right.
And I'll just bring that back really quickly. I have a framework that I use called the Holy Trinity of Growth. And it's about how do we align culture, employee experience, and customer experience to drive growth. And that's what I use in assessing my clients when I enter into engagements.
Culture, employee experience, and customer experience. Aligning those towards growth and ultimately all the goals we're trying to achieve. I love it. It's been a pleasure to speak with you, Sue. This has been the CX Heroes podcast with Sue Duris, and we will see you next time.